We have been traveling far. Do you have a home? I hope so. Hope you're listening to us at home right now or in your office. If you're on your computer, you go to Las Vegas or radiotribune.com and you can go to the microphone there or the radio show, radiotribune.com, and click on whatever comes up in your search engine and go to our website. It'll be a black screen. It'll say Radio Tribune in red. And down below that, there'll be one of those little arrow play button jobs, a side pyramid, and you hit that. That's a play button. And you'll listen to whatever's being played at the time. And right now, you would listen live to this radio show. And you can participate by calling in our phone number, 702-493-5222, and tell us your ideas of what you think's happening with this country and where we can go from here. And hopefully you'll have some great ideas for some solutions, because that's what we try to address here, the solutions of what's going on and what our recommendations are to be able to proceed in an orderly fashion to success and make this country great, like it used to be. Back when I was born, which was shortly after the Second World War, this country was a great place. Leave It to Beaver and all that stuff, the wife staying at home, baking her cookies or whatever, taking care of the kiddies, making sure they get off to school. And there's someone home when they come home. And just a nice life. One family member, the husband, doesn't have to be, and of course we got to be politically correct now, so could be a woman, whatever, could be both of them, off working, trying to make a living. Back then, one person, like Wally Cleaver, no, Ward Cleaver, I'm sorry, that was the father's name, he could make a living by himself to be able to support his family and even send little Wally and Beaver off to college maybe when the time came to do that. Back then, because the government wasn't involved as much as it is now with the college education funding and loans and things of that absolutely distort the picture and make the cost of college go through the roof. Everything the government does is going to have the opposite reaction, and they've made college unaffordable for 99.9% of the people that want to go to college. What a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant government we have. Everything they do is destructive. And you sometimes wonder, like after the 8 years we've just gone through, if it's not the plan of these leaders to destroy this country. Because it certainly seems like it is with this president. Now the latest is he's planning on appealing, or vetoing rather, a proposal that was just unanimously consented to in the Congress and the Senate to allow people, United States citizens, I guess, to sue foreign entities like Saudi Arabia for the Arabians that bombed the towers with those airplanes. They damaged people, United States citizens, took people's members of their families away, and there's damages there. And why shouldn't we be able to sue these people? Why couldn't we sue like Libya over that Lockerbie 103, Flight 103 deal and lock up their money? Why do we give $100 billion back to Iran when they're funding terrorists? Why are we not giving that money to people that lost limbs and lives and so forth, that Iran was part of funding terrorist organizations and caused damages? If they have money sitting in this country in a bank, why can't U.S. citizens sue to get some results or some justice, if you will, from damages that these foreign countries have caused? And Obama is planning on vetoing something in this society, in our country now, where something passes unanimously. This guy is insane. And these guys, they can dig up these excuses, as lame as they may be, but he doesn't want these countries to be able to turn around and sue the American citizen because they sued them. Okay, great. What a wonderful deal that is. So if you don't have any bank accounts or so forth in Saudi Arabia or Libya or Iran, what the hell are you worried about? What do they have of yours that they can attach? You idiot. Obama, what a fool. You know, you can always dream up these excuses. And it doesn't work. I mean, it's just pathetic. Our leadership is pathetic. We better get Donald Trump in there because let me tell you something. This Hillary Clinton or whoever's going to run in her place, because I'll tell you what, folks, I don't think this lady is going to make it. I think it's despicable to even consider her candidacy because her health situation has certainly raised a lot of concerns with a lot of people that are genuinely concerned. This isn't just spin and crap. This is for real. That lady passed out trying to get into that vehicle that was picking her up the other day at that 911 event. That lady was wobbling. She has some. She was out on her feet, and then her feet went away. And if there wasn't for two people holding her, she was going down flat on her back. I'll tell you what, that's a I hate this woman, but I don't wish passing out in the street on anybody. I mean, she has a medical problem, and she needs to be honest with the American people for once in her life. I know that goes against her grain. She could never be honest, but God damn it, this is important. This is for the American people. For Christ's sakes, how is she going to lead us if she can't even be honest with us? Uh, Absolutely pathetic. And then the distortion that comes from the mainstream press. Oh, she went to Chelsea's condo and she was running around playing with the kiddies, the grandchildren. Anybody believes that, I got something worse than a bridge to sell you. I could sell you a pile of dog crap in the backyard. That is so phony, it's unbelievable. Boy, I tell you what, I get thinking about this lady and I go crazy and thinking about what it represents. It's the representation that really bothers me. This country has slipped so far into the cesspool that a person like of her character, non-character, whatever, her history, her history of destruction and devastation that follows the Clintons, the dead bodies. We have 3 or 4, I hear now, after the DNC convention of people on the way to meet the FBI get shot in the back out in front of their apartment. I mean, something is really, really smells. And what smells, in my opinion, is the Clintons. That's what smells. They get involved in stuff, and there you go. Uh, People going down the river, people dying. Vince Foster found in a park with 2 bullet holes in his head and no bullets. I mean, can you have anything more crazy out there than this kind of stuff? It's just insane. And the Democrats, the mainstream media, like this guy, Congressman Becerra or whatever, that was on Chris Wallace this weekend. And Chris Wallace, I tell you what, the Fox News station is going liberal fast and in a hurry, and I hear it's because Rupert Murdoch, sons were all raised in Europe, and they're all socialists, and they, of course, are in the leadership now of Fox News, and we've lost Fox News. The conservatives have, from Megyn Kelly to Chris Wallace to Brit Hume. They're all singing a very different tune these days. And people like Greta Van Susteren, I don't think she was as conservative as she passed herself off to be sometimes, but she's gonzo. There's going to be a lot of changes made, and they're not good for the Fox News ratings, I'll tell you, because if they come another CNN, they're going to go down the tubes. And that, I don't know, I hope something else props up to take their place. I really do, because without their voice, man, we're in jeopardy. We're in absolute jeopardy. This Obama thinking of vetoing something that passed both the House and the Senate unanimously is insane because I think it might take 60 or 60% or 66 2/3 majority, whatever it is, to override a presidential veto. Well, if there's ever been anything overridable, it would be something that would have passed the House and the Senate unanimously. This guy is crazy, okay? Obama has lost his mind. Anything with that kind of support would be crazy to veto it. I mean, what are you going to gain by that? You're just going to get slapped down. It's insane. But nothing has made any sense, really, if you look back at his 8 years in power. Nothing he's done has made sense. Everything's 180 degrees in the wrong direction. At any rate, I'd like to hear from you what your ideas are. Give us a call, 702-493-5222, and we can see what your solutions are. I'm just a big, windbag. All I got to say doesn't matter anyways. But I'd like to give the opportunity in the show. The reason is for people to call in and communicate. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. That means everybody out there agrees with me. So I guess there's nothing we can do about that. So we'll just implement my plans. But I'd rather have it, at least have the weight of a bunch of people that have, made some suggestions that we can keep track of here. And in our computer system that we've developed just for this, we can determine what people want to do and we can keep track. And we can tally it up and say this amount of people want to do this. This is their thought. And maybe we at some point will have enough power with the herd that we can start getting the right people in power. Because, boy, I tell you what, we sure need it. And the people we get in power, we sure as hell need to get rid of them before they get contaminated. Because the people that we send off to, like Washington, for example, they're distorted and they're stolen away from the people that voted for them, their constituents. On the first day in Washington, D.C., they get taken out to lunch by some operative that's under directions from some congressman or some senator to get this new guy taking a lunch and get him his envelope so he knows who he's working for from here on out. And the special interests take over, and you don't last too long. A week or two after being there, you find out that you're going to do it their way. Well, you're not going to get a damn thing done in Washington. You're not going to be able to take care of any of the people that elected you because they don't count. They're just those pesky little hands that live back wherever you are. And if they think they have any say in Washington, they're crazy. So this is the way this country is run. And it's run this way because we have a two-party system that has to go. It's an illegal enterprise. It's a corrupted enterprise. And we need to make it illegal, and we need to make sure that this country doesn't allow that kind of authority to take hold of us and steal our elected officials, because that's not the way our founding fathers envisioned the way this country was going to be run. And it doesn't work. What business in this country runs where you have a division where half your company wants to do something and the other half doesn't? What's going to happen to a company like that? It's going to fail miserably. Its days are numbered. It'll never work. I propose 2 and 2 is 4, and someone else is going to say no, something different. It just doesn't work. And this is the way we try to run this country. It's crazy. It's insane. It just doesn't happen. It'll never happen. And it's like there's only been 2 presidents impeached in this country. I think one was Nixon, and at the time that he was unlucky enough to get impeached, I believe that the Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate. So the impeachment process is you go to the House first, and if they have enough votes, they will sustain a impeachment process. Now you've been like charged. The American criminal system, you've been charged with a crime now, and now you have to go like before the court. And the court in this case is the Senate. And if you're controlled by the opposite party and you're the president, you're in deep crap because the opposite party will convict you of your impeachment. It's never been done because Nixon resigned before he got convicted. I think the writing was on the wall because the party was controlled by the opposite party. I mean, the conviction would have been controlled by the opposite party, so he was in trouble. In the Clinton thing, the Republicans controlled the House, and they determined through a vote to charge him, and they impeached him. Well, then it had to go to the Senate. Well, who controls the Senate? At that time, it was, I guess, the illustrious Harry Reid and company, And there you go. Anybody that's of the same political party as the president will never, ever, 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 ever in a jillion trillion years ever impeach a president from the same party. That won't happen. And that's an example of how deplorable and despicable the two-party system is. It doesn't work. Our forefathers never envisioned this kind of devastation caused by a party. Maybe they did because they said political parties are a big cancer and they shouldn't be allowed. And as a result of that thought, they didn't put them in the Constitution at all. And maybe they thought they were not allowing them at that point. But whatever's not in the Constitution is left up to the states. And the states, of course, in their wisdom and elected officials decide they'll have political parties. So every state in this country has been taken over by the Democrat and the Republican committees. So the states no longer can get anything done because it's like a company with half your workers doing this and half doing something else. So it's a fiasco. But the only time the political parties really mean anything as far as a federal election goes is the president. The Congress and Senate and all that is all controlled by the states because they're actually state representatives. So, you know, this thing is a situation where we have got to get the electoral process for president the hell away from the two-party system. Look at what the Democrats did and the Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all that. The way they had these super delegates. That's nothing but a fixed job. That's an absolute fix. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz admitted to that on some interview. She was asked, what are these super delegates? What's the reason for them? And she blatantly spit out there that, well, that's to prevent any grassroots organization like a Tea Party or something having influence in the Democratic Party to where they actually choose who the nominee is going to be. So we would never want anything like that. So they come up with a super delegate fixed job where anybody starting out the favored one is already ahead by 750 super delegates. So how are you going to win in that position? What the Democrats did in this election cycle is they had to, I guess, choose Hillary Clinton as the favored one for some, I don't know what. She knows where her body's, who knows. But at any rate, that was the deal. So they had to dust off somebody to run against her, because to go unopposed, that wouldn't be probably a good thing. I mean, she has to be, you know, somewhat look like it wasn't a big fixed job. So they dust off this Bernie Sanders, who when they did that, he wasn't even a Democrat. He's always been an independent. But he would sit with the Democrats and he would vote with the Democrats usually. So they dusted him off, propped him up there, and made him the competition for Hillary Clinton. They had another couple of players that were non-incidental early on, but they quickly dropped out. They weren't getting any support. But this Bernie Sanders, for whatever reason, I guess the millennials had a lot to do with it, these poor dumbed down kids coming out of college and in college who have been indoctrinated and brainwashed into socialism. They thought this Bernie Sanders was a great idea. And they backed him so much that, Jesus, Bernie Sanders, if it wasn't for the superdelegates, might have won the damn thing. I mean, this was close to being dangerous for the Democrats. So their little fixed job didn't work too well. The best thing that came out of this election cycle is they got rid of that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I couldn't stand. What a despicable person she was. Oh, what a hack. Just a political partisan hack. But she's gone, so good riddance as far as I'm concerned. But you know what? She's actually a congressman or something from Florida. So I think she just got nominated or something again, and I guess she'll be in the general election. Probably get reelected, knowing these Democrats. But it's something. This is really some country we've turned into. But everything that should be up is down, and what an old Al Gore statement. You know, and all the numbers that are supposed to be up are down and down is up. Well, that's where we are today. I mean, nothing makes sense. You look at all the numbers that should mean something, like the unemployment rate is a phony number to begin with. It's actually around 30-something%. 90 million something people out of work is not 4.9% of whatever they're trying to sell us, the garbage, phony numbers. and you look at the GNP, 1.1% every month gets lowered down from what they project it to be. Uh, we're in deep, deep trouble because every plan, every policy that Obama's put out there simply doesn't work. They're the opposite of what we need to do, and they're failures. They have failed at every single thing. The cash for clunkers, all that did was get a lot of cars that were drivable, cheaper transportation, got them crushed, and that worked out well for nobody. What a stupid thing that was. And every policy they've done, every single one, they take General Motors away from the stockholders and bondholders, which was illegal. I think that's probably still in court. Who knows what that repercussion or result will be, because the courts in this country are broken, flat ass broken. And, how do you steal stockholders' interest and give it to somebody else? Obama did it because, he's the master, he's the president, all this power. And what that means is it's going to take years and years to straighten that out. And the financial repercussions and the damages, who pays if anybody ever pays? Because you're relying on a court system to make a determination of where the responsibility lays. And they'll never, ever, ever admit to anything that they made a mistake. They'll never overturn one of their own decisions. It's just a broken, broken system. We need oversight in this world. We need judicial watch. We need the Freedom of Information Act. We need things like this. And we need to have our judicial system. We need a civil tribunal that has the authority to overrule any judge, like in a state. Like, let's say Nevada, for example. We elect through a ballot initiative, maybe 5 individuals, 7, whatever the number is. We elect these people from the community. They can be doctors, not a lawyer, not a judge. They can't have anything to do with the judiciary, because this will be a judiciary discipline committee. And they will look to all the complaints that they get from various litigants, that a judge made an error, he didn't follow statutes, he didn't follow the law, he didn't abide by the Constitution of the state of Nevada or even the U.S. Constitution. So if there's been a fatal flaw in a judge's procedural ruling, then it needs to be overturned. And the poor litigants that were before this judge, who ruled incompetently, is no other way to put it, when you violate the law of the land, why should the poor litigants have to wait 2 and 3 years for a decision from a higher court? And then that's a crapshoot, because depending on what's transpired, the appellate court could be confused. They only have 3 judges on that panel, and they're just district court judges, former district court judges. And how are they going to get it right? And do they know the law to begin with? And when they ruled, that's it. Now it goes to the Supreme Court if you got a problem with that one, the state Supreme Court. And what if they get it wrong? I mean, this judicial process is a friggin' nightmare in the state of Nevada. We get rated from a company out of Washington, D.C. yearly, and the rating for Nevada is an F, a big, fat, failing F, because this judiciary is out of control. And I know, because I've been playing with this stupid district court here in Nevada for since '09, and it's a jumble of convoluted crap is what it is, and it's totally, totally illegal. Now, anybody that doesn't agree with the ruling, they're going to scream the same way, right? Well, in my particular case, I have all the evidence, all the documents, the laws are there, they're on the books. And the judge in my particular case, the first judge, had an agenda to pay lawyers, even the one that didn't prevail, the losing lawyer. He just had to pay everybody, because in this state, one of the biggest problems is that judges have to get reelected. They have to go before the electorate to keep their job every 6 years. So that means they have to do what? They have to raise campaign contributions. Now, if you was a judge and you had to go out and raise money from people, who's the easiest marks that you can go after to get this money? Oh, well, how about the lawyers that depend upon you for your rulings? How about them? They should be a pretty easy source for money because they have to play along. They have to contribute to your campaign if you get reelected, and or otherwise they'll never win a case in your court. So to protect their clients and their livelihood, really, they have to be extorted from you, and they have to make sure that their contribution is of a particular size that it'll work, and they will get favorable rulings. Now, as unfortunate as that is, that's the way it is. And the people of Nevada have had several opportunities in the past to vote and change that policy in that particular position that the judges are elected. And we could go for a merit-based system or something similar to that have been done in other states. Some states have recognized that the last thing you really want to do is subject your judges to this type of requirement that they raise cash to be reelected, and that cash comes from the lawyers operating within their system. That's a bad, bad, bad deal, subject to tremendous, tremendous abuse. And if you think it doesn't go on, you're crazy. Okay, especially in the state of Nevada. It is pathetic. We have judges ruling contrary to the Constitution of the United States. We have them ruling contrary to the Supreme Court binding precedences, where a country is stare decisis, meaning that we're supposed to follow precedents because that's judicially economic to do it that way. Why should we have judges all over the country deciding every single case that comes before them, and they can't refer to previous cases that have similar facts? Why would you have to keep continually redeciding, and lengthening out the process when it's already been decided? Especially in the case of the Supreme Court of the United States. When they make a decision, a ruling, opinion, it becomes a binding precedent. And all lower courts, including all state courts, all lower federal courts, every court in the system has to abide by a United States Supreme Court decision. It literally becomes the law of the land, unless it's overturned somehow or Congress passes a new whatever. There's a process to go through. A binding previous decision from the U.S. Supreme Court have, I think I heard a number, 135 times. In 240 years, I think the U.S. Supreme Court has overturned itself 135 times, I believe. And in a period of 240 years, that's not a lot. And a lot of the overturning may have been outdated, meaning that they had to make a different ruling than what they'd done before because times have changed. So they've adapted a little bit. But still, they've had discussions with the Supreme Court justices between themselves. I can remember one, I think it was Salit, well, two of them, Kagan, I think was one, and Sotomayor, Alito. They had a discussion about the importance of the principle of stare decisis. What's been ruled before should be the rule today, and unless they change it. And the discussion went along the route that it's better to have a law on the books, even if it's a law that maybe should be overturned at some point. For now, it's on the books, and it's better to at least have the law there, and that's the law of the land, rather than not have a law there, and people wouldn't have any direction in that case. So the laws are on the books, and they're there for a reason, so people know what the law is. So that makes sense. Even if it's a bad law, do whatever you have to do to change it. But in the meantime, that's the law, and it has to be upheld. Take that lady Kim Davis, that was a clerk in Kentucky. She had a job to issue marriage licenses. Well, this ruling came down from the Supreme Court several months ago, and she had to issue licenses to gay people or couples of the same sex. Well, that went against her religion, so she refused to do it. Well, whoever throws her in jail because for 5 days she served, because she broke the law of the land now, which came from the Supreme Court, that all courts, every state had to abide by. So that became the law of the land, so she had to go trotting off to jail. So the law of the land is, can be changed in very, very rare circumstances, but until it is, it's the law of the land. And these judges, like in Nevada and everywhere, have to understand that. But one of the biggest problems in life is trying to explain to a judge or anybody in authority that they can't do something like talking to a rock because they think they can do whatever the hell they want. I've had judges in the state of Nevada tell me that any ruling they make as to jurisdiction or anything else in the courtroom is the rule of law. Well, that's BS because that's just fatally wrong. A judge cannot litigate from the bench. He doesn't make law. As a matter of fact, he's so low down, all he's supposed to do is abide by the law and rule by the law. This judge is no special God, all rise type crap. He has a job to do, and he better do it, and he better not let that job go to his head, or he's worthless. And he's anti what his job's supposed to be, and he should be removed from the bench. It's as simple as that. We have laws, and they should be upheld. That's the theory, anyways, and it sounds great on paper. The problem is that once you put people in power for so long, you give them a job, you give them a title, all rise, everything goes to their head, and they end up being distorted. Their common sense goes away, and they end up doing whatever the hell they want to do. And the problem with that is that it takes the litigants so long to straighten things out when a judge makes a fatal mistake, either through incompetency, through an agenda like paying lawyers that you shouldn't pay so they can contribute to your campaign. Whatever the agenda is, you need to watch out. And you need to have a quicker remedy when a judge makes a mistake. We have to enforce what's on the books. And we shouldn't have to wait for some higher court to get off their ass and redecide a case that was decided wrong. It's a situation that's paramount. We have to correct these mistakes, and we have to correct them quickly. That's why, through the herd here and people's suggestions and recommendations for solutions, have made one that we need a civil tribunal elected by the people of a community. It has to come from the ground up, and we have to give them the authority through the public policy that this is the way we want to do it from here on out. We can still have the appellate court, we can still have the Supreme Court, but the purpose for this civil tribunal would be when we get a complaint through channels, kind of like the judicial discipline committee does now. It's all set in place, but it's the wrong people running it. That particular committee is made up of 7 individuals. One of them is a judge, 3 of them are lawyers, and 3 of them are laymen, supposedly, from the community. Well, that's bass-ackwards, okay, because you got 4 people out of 7 that are from the judiciary industry, if you will, and they're never going to rule against one of their own. They're just not. So the discipline committee in the state of Nevada is worthless. But the system's there, it's set up, you can file a complaint. So we maintain that, but we get rid of those 7 people and we replace them with 7 people elected by the community, by the voters. And we put them in there, and they're not going to be judges, that's a disqualification, or a lawyer. They have to be outside the judiciary. And they have to have a certain amount of common sense, and they have to be able to read. And they're between, let's say, 7 people, they have to figure out if a judge ruled wrong. It's not a hard job. I could do it in a heartbeat, especially on something like trust law. I can read a law and I can read an opinion from a higher court, a precedent, and I can see what it says. It doesn't take much to do that and say, well, this judge ruled bass-ackwards. We have a judge here, I think his name's Doug Smith, in the district court. I understand that he's overturned something like 90% of the time, a higher court has to overturn them. What kind of judge is that? You need to get rid of this guy. He is a waste of resources. And he's just, and the devastation that he causes for people that have to go before him, it can be just, it could ruin your life. And this is what we have to really work on getting this straightened out. This is really important. There's a lot of problems in this country, in this state. But this is one of the major ones, because if you can't follow the law, you're not going to have a civil society, and you're going to end up with chaos. When your court system doesn't work and they've ripped off enough people, there's going to be something. There's going to be some kind of hell to pay, and it's not going to be pretty. And we have to avoid that. And this civil tribunal or discipline committee, if you will, whatever, can go a long way to correct that. For example, in Nevada, we have laws. We have our state constitution that's made up of laws and canons, which are ethics type rules that judges, for example, and lawyers both should follow. And it reads black and white, very clear to me, someone that can read. The preamble of the revised Nevada Code of Judicial Conduct is very, very clear. Anybody without a doctorate degree can understand this. High school could probably understand it pretty easily. Anyone that's going to college should be able to understand this. That's for sure. But you won't have to be a lawyer or a judge to comprehend it. It's done kind of in simple, straightforward language. There's nothing fancy here. The preamble of the purpose for the judicial conduct canons, as they call them, is an independent, fair, impartial judiciary is indispensable to our system of justice. What's hard to understand there? That's very, very clear. The whole purpose of this entire judicial process is to have an impartial judiciary. And it's indispensable to our system of justice. Of course. My God. The United States legal system is based upon the principle that an independent, impartial, and competent judiciary composed of men and women of integrity will interpret and apply the law that governs our society. Does anybody out there not comprehend those words? I mean, this is pretty remedial. It really is simple, and it's easy to understand. And I think anybody with any mush between their head left at all is going to be able to decipher this and understand the meaning behind it. I think this civil tribunal people that we elect can easily understand this. Thus, the judiciary plays a central role in preserving the principles of justice and the rule of law. Jesus, I mean, this is really, really, really simple stuff. Now, in a particular case I have a lot of familiarity with, especially recently, there's been a ruling come down from Judge William Gephardt, District Court Judge, Department 19, who has said various things in courts that I have memorialized in transcripts from the proceedings. And what he has said on the record is just as contrary to this preamble stuff that I just read, that it's just absolutely incomprehensible that a person of this type of brain waves can be sitting on a bench in the state of Nevada as a district court judge, and the devastation that a party like this causes is overwhelming. It's absolutely unbelievable. And we need to do something to get rid of a guy like this. When he was on as a judicial judge, his record, his report card, if you will, from lawyers and other people that had dealings in front of him in the court of law and the Justice Department, his ratings were terrible, really. I think his overall rating was about 60%, which is a D, just on the borderline of failing. I think a 59 is an F, if I'm familiar with my days in school. But some of the ratings, like on Does He Know the Law, I think we're in the 30s. And that is pathetic. But I'll tell you what, my opinion of Judge William Gephardt is he absolutely does not know the law, unequivocally. I could have a discussion with him anytime, and he will run like a scalded dog because he can't face it. He tells people like me and my son in the courtroom to sit down and shut up, that I need to wait outside because what he's saying in front of the court is baloney, and it's not lawful, and it's illegal, and it's unconstitutional. And this guy is making rulings as a district court judge in Nevada. Well, I got news for him. I'm not going anywhere. So eventually, somebody in the state of Nevada is going to rule correctly on this case because it's not rocket science, okay? It's constitutional law, really. And when you violate someone's property rights and rights to due process, you are a failure as a judge. And that's going to hit home and come to someone's attention and come to it soon. And here's the canons. I just read you the preamble. Let's move on down the ladder here, for example, and let's go to canon number 1 and see what it says. Canon number 1. This is referring to judges now, okay? And that's the discipline committee that we as a civil tribunal needs to take over. The way it works is somebody that has a case, let's say, they don't like the outcome or they want to put in a complaint to the committee, they fill out a form and they put down there what happened and they submit it to the committee for review. These 7 members overlook it and digest the facts that are presented, look up the record perhaps, look up the proceedings, look up the statutes may be referred to, look up the law, and then see what precedences. And the form that's submitted to them will probably list a lot of precedences if it's done right. So that takes away a lot of the requirement that the Judiciary Committee has to do. Because here it is, look at it and see if I'm right. And if I'm right, rule accordingly. Don't just rubber stamp it that, oh, we're just all judges and lawyers here, so we just stamp here and get rid of this. Like the complaint I put before the Judiciary Committee, the one that exists now with the 4 to 7 makeup of judges and lawyers, comes back and says, you submitted a complaint stating that a federal judge violated 18 USC Code 1014, 1344, and 1957. And then it goes on with some more jumble bumble, and then at the end it says, but we as a committee only really take action when a judge has committed a violation of the law. So see you later, thanks for writing, and goodbye. Well, you said up front that I submitted that he violated these codes. I submitted precedents, I submitted documents, I showed where those codes were violated. And then you say, but you only do things when a judge violates those codes, and then you don't do anything. Well, he did, and the record proves it. But they just rubber stamp. They don't do anything. The only judge I think they've done anything to in the last several years, except for one, is Judge Ramsey, which is another matter that has some really strange things going on in it. It's kind of like the fellow judges and lawyers and so forth wanted to get rid of her for whatever reason, because maybe she was making them do their job. So in that particular case, being a judge herself, she's going against the board, if you will, that makes up this board that decided to discipline her and remove her from office. Well, that's a different situation than someone like me, a citizen, going before the board with a complaint about one of their own. They'll protect them to death. They will never do anything about that. The only judge I know that did some time, as a matter of fact, in jail, is this Judge Jones, and he was removed through the discipline board. He was disbarred or whatever, but he was already in jail. Oh, nice job. Boy, they decided that case 1 year, and what a lot of work that was, huh, figuring that one out. But anyways, number 1 canon, canon number 1, a judge shall uphold and promote the independence, integrity, and impartiality of the judiciary, and shall avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety. Again, this is pretty remedial. This is very easily understood. And what is 1.1? Rule 1.1 under Canon 1, compliance with the law. Okay, a judge shall comply with the law, including the code of judicial conduct. Point being there, a judge has a duty to comply with the law. Anybody out there don't understand that one? Any of you judges out there on district court? You need a remedial course on that one? You have to abide by the law. In other words, comply with the law. You don't make law, you abide and comply with it. So, for example, if we have a doctrine in this country that's law of the land, been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, it's even in the Constitution, that any state is completely without jurisdiction to make any ruling directly affecting the title of any property or anything else like a trust, not within the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada has no subject matter jurisdiction over that property, being a thing, being a trust, whatever, being any anything. Not in the state of Nevada, they don't have jurisdiction. That's pretty easy to understand. That's under Canon 1, Rule 1.1. Anybody out there doesn't understand that, you don't need to be sitting on a bench making rulings in particular cases. In my particular case, it concerned, when the decision was made from the court, it concerned real property located where? In New Hampshire. It wasn't in Nevada. This court never had jurisdiction over two New Hampshire trusts. It could not have. It did not have, and never could have. But we had a situation with this Judge Alan Earl, the first judge, decided on his own. He created an agenda to pay the lawyer that's a potential campaign contributor. Remember, we have to get the money from him anyways. We have to feather him up so he's got money to pay and contribute to the campaign of the judges. So this Judge Alan Earl ruled that all the lawyers had to be paid, and that became the most important issue in this case, where you would think the most important issue would be to protect the beneficiary's rights as determined by the trust document that was done by a settler, and that's the last wishes this person had in life. It was their money, it's what they worked for their whole life, and they had every right to give it to whoever they wanted to. And they did so in this trust document from New Hampshire, created in and governed by the laws of New Hampshire. So on the face of everything, the state of Nevada would never, ever, ever have control of any out-of-state trust. Just don't have it by the Constitution of the United States. And there have been Supreme Court decisions from the United States that have ruled that way. So this is not an issue that's in dispute. This is black and white, as fundamentally basic as can be. And this judge completely violated all the laws in this land by doing what he did with his agenda to pay lawyers. He did a lot of other things that in doing this that he couldn't do also. But the biggest one, he couldn't do it to start with. And then other things compound on that. One is a spendthrift trust. The doctrine of that is that whoever had the money, the settler, put provisions that anyone that they give money to under the spendthrift clause, they have steps in there perhaps that they have to abide by. Let's say that they don't get anything until they attain the age of 30, for example. Well, that's a provision under the spendthrift clause. So the person, the beneficiary, by law and by the statutes and everything else, they don't own anything until they get it. That's the whole basic understanding principle of trust. You don't own anything until you get it. Therefore, no creditor, nobody can attack your interest. You can't assign your interest to anybody else. You can't borrow money on it. You can't do a damn thing with it because nobody should allow you to, because you don't have any collateral. All you have is an expectancy that someday in the future you might get something from this trust. But until the day you get it, you got nothing. And that even applies to bankruptcy. If you file bankruptcy, you don't even have to disclose the fact that you're an heir in this potential trust because you haven't got anything. So you're filing bankruptcy before you get it. You don't even have to disclose it. It's exempt. think 541(2)(c) or something's the language of it. I'm becoming a lawyer here these days. But anyways, it's very fundamental basic law. And a judge has to abide by the law. Judge Earl did not abide by the law. Now, he decides not to run, and I guess for good reason, because he wasn't competent to be a judge any longer, in my opinion. So he didn't run for re-election, and this guy Gephardt gets elected. And now he's in charge of Department 19, so he inherits my case. Now, the only reason he had anything to inherit, because Judge Earl, when he stole the money from New Hampshire, he reserved $400,000 of what he stole in case that I decide to appeal the rulings that he made that were illegal rulings. Now that's nice, huh? Here's void rulings by law, and the judge is reserving my money, my trust money, my beneficiary's money and everything, reserving that to pay lawyers to object to an appeal. Nice, totally illegal, can't be done. Never been done in the history of the world, really. Oh, I can't find a case like this one. So this is very, very strange. Now Gephardt comes trolling along, and he's just going to rule the way Earl ruled. How's he doing? Well, what he's done by his recent ruling on August 9th is he ruled Earl, in deciding the particular case that I put before him, he had jurisdiction over my sister was stealing money from me on money that she took from New Hampshire when my mother died, that half of it was mine. And she deposited it in her bank account, thereby commingling my funds with her funds, and she started using it on a daily basis like they were all her funds. So I had to put a stop to that. So I sued her in Nevada District Court because the money was in Nevada. And she was stealing money in Nevada. Because it belonged to a trust was completely irrelevant. It just gave me a lot of protection by law. But the point is, it's not a trust issue. It's an individual issue where I have a thief stealing money from me. And the court in Nevada had jurisdiction over her because she was a resident of Nevada and she was performing a crime in Nevada. So the judge had jurisdiction to remove her as trustee. He put in the ruling, a later ruling, that she had to return the money to the trust. And by rights, she would have been responsible for all the fees and everything associated with lawyers and expenses. Well, the problem with that was that her lawyer had told the judge that she didn't have any money to pay him. So the lawyer and the judge got together trying to figure out a way of how he can get some campaign contributions. I figured out a way, well, we'll just sell that home back there in New Hampshire and get enough money so we can pay everybody and reserve enough money in case this guy Clark should want to appeal my ruling, if he has the audacity to do that. And that's what this judge did. Well, in the meantime, when he made his ruling, he made me the prevailing party. I won the case because I proved to the court that she was stealing money. It wasn't hard to do. The bank record showed that. So I won. And the judge had to issue an order telling her that she had to return the money. So that was a money judgment. I win, right? Okay. Well, this judge decides to get the lawyer paid over everything. So in essence, he's paying the lawyer of a losing party. Now, we have a doctrine in the United States called the American rule as to lawyer fees. And that means, unlike most other countries in the world, they have a doctrine called loser pays. So if you decide to sue somebody and you lose, you're going to pay the winning side's legal fees. And that seems fair because, you know, if you're going to sue somebody, you better be sure you know what you're doing. Because if you lose, you're going to pay not only your fees and expenses, but the other side's too. That's the way every other country is. And what every other country we notice has for the amount of litigation that's done is they have at least half probably of what this country does, because the lawyer lobby in this country in Washington, D.C. is so powerful that they make damn sure that this country doesn't fool with the American rule. The American rule is both sides pay their own legal fees. Well, what Judge Gephardt did in my case was he's paying the loser side's legal fees from the winner side legal fees. This guy is such a moron and inept at his job that he's taken the American rule and turned it completely upside down, where he's paying the loser. Can you imagine a judicial system where if you sue somebody, you're going to get your legal fees paid by the person you sued, even if you lose? Judge Gephardt, are you there? Hello? Anybody home between those ears? I don't think so. You are a moron. For God's sakes, explain that. But no, you don't have to explain anything. You just tell people when they ask a question along those lines, like my son asked one day, how do you award legal fees to the criminal in this case? Sit down and shut up. I mean, what a moron. This guy needs to be thrown off the bench. And soon. We can't wait for the election cycle to come around. In what is he, 6 years from 15? Jesus Christ. 2021, there are going to be a lot of people in this state pissed off over this guy. I'll tell you what. Friggin' moron. Anyways, folks, been nice relaying this little event to you. I'm sure you're all excited about it. But anyways, you better pay attention, because if you're a Nevada taxpayer, eventually someone's going to decide this case in the right way. And if it has to go to federal court and be decided, it's going to be very, very expensive. And guess who's going to pay? The taxpayers of the state of Nevada are going to have to pay for this fiasco caused by the team of Earl and now Gephardt. What a bunch of buffoons.